Good?
Yeah.
All right. Well, as Honey said, this is literally our first week in office. I was sworn in on Tuesday at noon. We don't have email addresses yet. We barely have phone numbers, but we are ready to hear from you. And what we're going to do tonight is the first of what is hopefully many town halls and forums that we do with you. This is something that is urgent, something that we're going to be addressing in the immediate future here in January, but we're going to be doing this all the time. So bear with us a little bit. We're trying something new, having you all in different circles and having a sort of more in-depth conversation around this stuff. But what's exciting is that we're getting started off my term, which will be 4 years as supervisor, working together, listening, coming up with priorities together so that I can take your voice into City Hall. Sound good? All right. I want to thank Tenderloin Community School. Give them a round of applause so they can hear us for hosting us. I want to thank all the volunteers and my staff who I'll introduce later. We're going to go ahead and get started with this. Let me tell you what we're doing here. So I'm going to go through and tell you a bit about the particular pot of money that we're going to be allocating as a board and along with the mayor. But really what we want to do is get your ideas and feedback on your priorities as a community. How many of you filled out the survey already? Okay. So anybody who didn't fill out the survey yet, please do that online. There are 4 ways that we're going to get your feedback tonight. So if you feel like if one of them didn't land, hopefully one of the others will land. One is the survey. The second is going to be a conversation that you have in the circles. The third is over there. You can go ahead and write down your budget priorities and put them onto the paper there. And the fourth is that after this is over, me and my staff, at the very least me, will stay here and talk to anybody who wants to share something with me until we're done. So however long that takes, if we have to go outside and do that, we can do that. But this is what I'm doing tonight, and I want to hear from everyone who has something to share. So we're going to get started. I'm going to tell you a little bit about this particular pot of money that we are going to be able to allocate from the Educational Revenue Augmentation Fund. So there's going to be a little bit of a PowerPoint quickly to educate all of us on what it is we're talking about. But I want to be clear that though we're talking about this pot of money, everything that you share tonight we will use moving forward. So if we don't get to your priority with this money that we have here, we're going to get to it in the budget process this year. We're going to get to it sometime over the next 4 years, and I promise you I will fight with you for those priorities. The Educational Revenue Augmentation Fund. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So we have a particular pot of money here that the city got that was unexpected that we're going to be able to allocate for some important things for our community. And I want to tell you just quickly how that came to be. So the city and county collects property taxes, commercial property, residential property, and has a particular formula as to how that's allocated. The largest percentage of it goes directly to the city and county. A smaller percentage of it goes to BART. A smaller percentage of it, 9%, goes to SFUSD and City College directly. And 25% goes to something called the Educational Revenue Augmentation Fund. It's basically a fund that, from our property taxes that we send up to the state, that they then use to allocate money back to our schools. So we've been growing a lot and developing a lot as a city. And because of that, our property taxes have grown by 20% in the last 2 years alone. That is a massive amount of growth that has taken place in our city. And the result of that is that we've now given, for the first time, and we're one of just about 4 counties in the state where this is the case, we've given so much money as part of this educational fund that's intended for schools to the state that we've actually exceeded the amount that the state has decided is required for our schools. So the state sets a formula that determines the money that goes to schools, and based on that formula, we've exceeded that amount in terms of our contribution to the Educational Revenue Enrichment Fund, Augmentation Fund. So what I want to be clear about here is that this hasn't meant that the schools have gotten any more money. This number is set by the state and is determined by them, and it doesn't go up from our property taxes going up. But the amount that we've given them has exceeded that. So you understand a little bit about school funding, and I used to be on the school board, so this is something that, and I was chair of our budget committee, so I thought a lot about this. San Francisco Unified School District receives a very low percentage of overall property tax revenues as compared to other counties in the state. So the school district receives about 33%, whereas most other school districts, the median is at 54% of overall property tax revenue. And that's a formula that's set in state law. So what does this mean? Because we've gone over the total amount of educational revenue augmentation fund contributions, we are going to get money back from the state to the city and county. And the total amount is actually for 2 years. We're going to receive $415 million total, combined 2 years, to the city and county from the state that we now have the opportunity to allocate. And this is going to happen separate from the larger budget process, which allocates $11 billion for the total budget. We now have to decide how we're going to use that $415 million. And some of the money is already determined in how it's going to be spent. Some of that is in reserves, some of that is in baseline contributions to certain things that are required in the city charter, like the library, MTA. Some of it will actually go to public schools automatically. Some of it goes to trees. Trees are important. And so some of this is already happening. But once that is allocated, there's $181 million that we now, as the Board of Supervisors and the mayor, in the short term, we're going to decide how to spend that number there. So how will this be decided? The mayor and the Board of Supervisors will decide. The Board of Supervisors will consider proposals. They will send that proposal to the mayor. The mayor will decide to veto it. If you have 8 votes on the Board of Supervisors, you can override the mayor's veto. So this is something that happens in a collaborative way. The mayor has a proposal that she's already made. It's a mix of affordable housing and homelessness and mental health. It's a fairly detailed proposal. It's about half on affordable housing and half on homelessness and mental health. It also has some particular funding to retrofit public housing. It has $4 million in it for street cleaning. So she's made a proposal. The Board of Supervisors in December, before I was there, had a proposal as well. That proposal also spends a significant amount on homelessness and housing. It also has $50 million to purchase grids from PG&E and $10 million on early childhood education, which I'll talk about in a second. There's a question as to whether this money is ongoing or one time. It's my view that it's most certainly ongoing funding. Something dramatic would have to change in order for us to not get this money in the future. Either the state would have to change their formulas or property taxes would have to decrease significantly. And we don't expect either of those things to happen, but there are some folks who believe we should only spend it on one-time things because we can't be sure that we're going to get this in the future. The budget season begins soon, and so this is one part of the conversation. Pretty soon we're going to have a larger conversation on all 11 billion. Last thing, there are 3 propositions. How many of you remember what's called Baby Prop C for early childhood education, preschool? Remember that? So we passed something called, it was Prop C then in June, to fund the biggest investment that this city has ever made in preschool, in early childhood education, child care. We also passed Prop G. How many of you remember Prop G in June? This is to give much needed raises to our teachers, to our educators. And then how many of you remember Prop C from November? Hopefully everybody remembers that. Yes. So that was a massive and much needed investment in homelessness and mental health. And getting up to 4,000 people off the streets. So go to the next slide. So the problem that we have right now is that all of these initiatives are actually on hold because of lawsuits or likely lawsuits that could take anywhere from a year to 7 years to find out what happens. So some terrible people sued the city and said that you can't spend that money because we disagree with the way that you collected the signatures and the percentage that you needed of the vote. So because of that, we're collecting that money, so you're still paying those taxes, or corporations are paying those taxes in some cases, and yet we can't spend that money yet because we have to wait to make sure that we succeed in the lawsuit. So the problem with that is that we want to spend money on Prop C, we want to spend money on both Prop Cs and also Prop G, but right now we have the challenge of not being able to spend the money because of these lawsuits. On Prop G, the school district started to pay the raises, and now the school district doesn't have the money to continue the raises because they're not receiving the parcel tax money, and because of that, there's a danger that they're going to have to stop these raises. San Francisco teachers are among the lowest paid as compared to other school districts in the Bay Area, so Prop G would have alleviated that. All right, so now I'm done talking. Are there any, really quickly, because I want to make sure I pass it on to you to have these conversations and to get this feedback, but are there any clarifying questions for everything that I just said? Like, what did something mean? Did that all make sense? Raise your hand if that all makes sense to you. Okay, it's okay if it doesn't. Yeah, sort of. It's actually, I tried to do as quickly as possible to make it as simple as possible. Yes? Neither do I. So we have a grid that's basically run by PG&E and owned by PG&E. And there are some cases in which we require the power to come from public power, like from our own aggregated choice. So public power, our public power program. And in those cases, we often have challenges with PG&E in getting access to that power and getting it transferred and all of that. And so some of the supervisors, what they wanted to do is purchase some of that grid and start kind of a down payment on taking some of our own grid into public hands rather than private hands of PG&E as a way to sort of alleviate some of those things that stall when we're building housing or building infrastructure that requires it to be public power. So we can say, all right, we're just going to buy that part from you so that we can easily make it public power and not have to wait for PG&E on everything. So it would cost a lot more to actually purchase the whole grid for the public, but this would be a very small down payment on that. Yeah. Yeah, well that's exactly what we're talking about tonight, which is how we can best use this money to address urgent priorities like homelessness, and how do we do it as quickly and most effectively as possible. So the answer to that is yes. All right, yes?
So a few questions. First, you used 4,000 as the population of homeless on the street. I've heard in excess of 7,700 every night. So are we only talking about helping 4,000 of the 7,700?
The question is, I said that I mentioned the number 4,000, which is not referring to the total number of homeless people on the street. It's referring to the number of people who we could have supported in getting into housing through Prop C. So the number you cited, upwards of 7,000, is closer to the number. It's probably actually much higher than that in general. But 4,000 was the number that we were going to be able to help through the funding under Prop C.
One more question.
Yeah.
So what you haven't talked about, or anybody is about the city starting their own bank. Is there any consideration for that in using this money?
Yes. Yes. So the question is, I didn't say anything about the city starting its own bank, and I support that. I absolutely support that. There's some work that still needs to be done to be able to make that transition, and we're not going to be able to do it in the next month or two. But this is a kind of example of something where if we did have a public bank, we would be able to make certain types of investments and certain type of long-range, funding opportunities, et cetera, that we can't do right now because we're stuck with, the private banking. So we would have other types of flexibility and opportunities if we had a public bank. I'm going to take a couple more, and then I want to make sure I turn it over because I don't want to have this all be me talking at you. Yes?
For the $415 million, and for the money that's set aside for the city departments, the board of supervisors and the mayor have their indication of how these departments.
Right, very good question. So some of the money, actually more than half of the money of the 415 goes to designated purposes like to the MTA, like to the libraries, like to trees, and that money will be allocated by the mayor, by the respective departments under the oversight of the mayor. So the Board of Supervisors doesn't have direct oversight over how that's spent. One of the questions is, should we push to make sure it's spent in a certain type of way? We certainly could legislate that way and all of that, but just them getting the money, it will be their decision under direction of the mayor to decide how to spend it. And in the case of the MTA, they're somewhat independent, so they will be able to decide how they spend that money on their own. Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of city and county bank, when are we going to push for a state bank like North Dakota? They have no bank to help their own farmers. They have our own bank in California to help our farmers.
Yeah, I support that too. So yes, the state bank, we can start with a local bank, and if we had a city bank, it'd be even bigger than North Dakota's bank, yes. So will we get a lot more from the ERAF surplus? Yeah. Yeah. That's a very good question. There will be an analysis of how much property taxes are going up, and based on that, and the formula that exists with the Educational Revenue Augmentation Fund, we'll have a sense of how much more money we're going to give back. The controller says he estimates right now $200 to $250 a year moving forward. I'm going to pass this to Honey so that we can get started and start to hear from you all, and then we'll come back at the end, and like I said, I will stay here as long as you want to talk about anything that you want to talk about.
Thank you, Supervisor. All right, now's the fun part. We have placed you in small groups. We're going to have a group discussion that is led by our facilitators out there. Can you raise your hand? In our next fiscal budget cycle, so in this coming budget cycle, what projects or specific programs would you like to see funded?
So here's the list. Navigation centers, housing and behavioral health, Prop C bridge, acquisition for housing, in subsidies for low-income housing, and also bathrooms and showers, street cleaning, addressing crime, low-threshold housing, and of course, and then Prop G, like bridge and labor council, some of the labor council suggestions, and for projects you would like to see funded next year, 24-hour pit stop, construction of showers, respite center, and of course, like specific transport officers too. I couldn't read this, but bathrooms and showers came up a lot, and nonprofit acquisition, and of course modular housing, and then modular housing, free muni, and of course food insecurity, addressing that's for special diets. So,
thank you, Jordan.
This is Harry Williams. I'm from Glide, and I represent the fine crowd in the back. My team, I want you to holler or stand up, wave something so everybody can see where these wonderful ideas came from. Good. Number one, we had so many incredible ideas, but there was mental health advocacy, workforce development, technology training for the youth, money for teachers, housing, affordable public transportation, wraparound services for mental health, housing for places for nonprofits to meet, because there's a dearth of places where nonprofit organizations can come together. Technology training for the youth. decongestion on the streets. We need money so that we can have something that works so that, because people are being run over walking down the sidewalks in San Francisco. There are people in wheelchairs who are not feeling safe. We need activation of the schools as shelters. There are some huge schools that could be turned into housing for teachers, health services, and so I'm going to read you also some of the project ideas that we had in closing. We need street medicine. That came up many different times. We need practitioners who will go into the streets to provide mental health and recovery services for people, as well as physical health. More alternative recovery. So right now, San Francisco only funds harm reduction, but it was said that faith-based and abstinence recovery should also be funded. We need to cultural events for the seniors. The seniors don't have a lot to do, and we need help for them. Social services and respite for low-income people. We need a place where they can have coffee, socialize, and find ways to supplement their income. We need a place for, we need public safety liaisons, people who can walk seniors and young people back and forth so they can maintain and be safe here in the community. We need to eliminate the long wait for home-delivered meals and groceries here in the Tenderloin. And we need the 724, am I over time? So we were saying that, how many people remember Mimi's? How many people remember a restaurant called Mimi's? At Mimi's, you could go in if you didn't have a lot of money. You could have a good meal at Mimi's and meet your friends. In the Tenderloin, we need a place where folk can come together to socialize and love on each other. Thank you for your time.
All right. Thank you to all of you for participating in our small groups and for our people who reported back. We really appreciate all your feedback. Now, to sort of wrap things up, give it up for Supervisor Matt Haney.
Well, all right. First of all, give yourselves a huge round of applause for being a part of this. This to me what it's all about. I was elected a few months ago, sworn in this week, and I work for you. So all of the things that you said tonight, I was just, one of the things I think I was most inspired by is how much compassion there is in this room, how much concern there is for people in our community who are struggling, who are not doing well in our community, how much concern and support there is for our children and for our teachers. I heard a lot of that. I heard the word housing a lot, and we need to build more housing, more affordable housing, more supportive housing in our city. I heard people talk about homelessness a lot. We have the large majority of people who are living on the streets are living on the streets here in District 6 in our community. So we need to fight to make sure that we address that crisis, that we build shelters and navigation centers in our communities, but also all over the city. I think is something that we need to fight for. So I heard also a lot about bathrooms, public restrooms, and showers. I heard a lot of that. I heard people talk about mental health. You heard the words mental health a lot. People who are struggling, who need treatment, who need support services. So what we're going to do is we're going to take all of everything that you shared with us, all of the priorities that are over there, all of the notes that were taken, all of the surveys, and we'll aggregate that and use that to guide us in our process, and then we will send out also to you so you know what other people had to say. So we want to share with you, and we also want to make sure that it guides what we do. Here's what's going to happen next. There is going to be oh, the kids are running around. There are going to be hearings about this month, about how this money is used. So what I'm going to commit to you is tell you when those hearings are, tell you exactly what's going on, and ask you to come out and make sure your voices are heard directly at City Hall. Raise your hand if you're down to do that, if you're down to be a part of that. Because ultimately what's going to matter is if our community, if District 6, if the Tenderloin, Soma, Mission Bay, Treasure Island, Recon Hill, if we are heard at City Hall, then they're going to actually do what you said here tonight. I want to thank my staff members who are a huge part of making this happen, and also you're going to get to know Honey Mahogany, who facilitated this. Abby Rivermonte over here, give her a round of applause. Han, who many of you know from my campaign back there in the corner. Monica over there, back in the corner. Give a round of applause to all of the volunteers who made this happen. Luis, Whit, we really, this was a team effort. Paul, this was our very first week in office. We didn't even have phones, but we wanted to make this happen, and they magically did, and y'all showed up. And this is the first of a lot more to come. So, thank you. I know that there are some questions. I will take a few quick ones. Okay.
So this money that came into the city,
Yeah.
am I wrong in thinking that a lot of this extra tax money came in because of pressure on our neighborhood, like our neighborhood
Yes.
is developing?
That's it. So what she said is the reason why we're getting all this money is because our neighborhood has grown so much. A huge amount of the growth in the property tax revenue has come because our neighborhood has taken on so much development. Over 80% of the development in San Francisco is happening in District 6, so we need to get some of that money back here to support our people. And what I campaigned on more than anything, because you told me that this is what you wanted me to do, is to bring that case to City Hall and say we need to bring resources back to the community that's most in need and that's most impacted by the development that's being experienced in the city. Yes? Thank you. He said he voted for me. Whether you voted for me or not, I'm going to represent you. I'm going to fight for you. I also want to, Allison Collins, will you, Allie, will you raise your hand? Okay. So Allison was just elected to the Board of Education. And we need to work together with our schools, with our city. This is the same kids, it's the same families. And if you have things related to the schools, also you can go and talk to her. She took the time out of her night to be here and to fight and to listen to all of you. So I am going to stay here and if necessary outside and talk to anybody who wants to share anything with me directly. My email address, because I don't have, can I give an SF Gov one? Okay. Matt, what is it? Okay. You can email me at matthaneysf@gmail.com. I don't have a government address yet.
Is that your old one?
That's my old one, matthaneysf@gmail.com. We also have your email if you did the surveys, so we will be in touch with you. And overall, I just want to say thank you so much for being here tonight. We are in this together. If we stick together, if we listen to each other, if we fight together, that's how we're going to win all the things that we talked about tonight.